Action, welcome back to another episode of the Rip Through a Podcast. Reso-matic, mate. Do we have a special guest on today?
Oh, we have a special one and different point of view. This one.
This is the first.
It's not a player. He's in depth with the game. He's been around it for a very long time.
He is a past player, which you forget.
Yeah, you do forget, but probably more known right now is he's dealt with a lot of big stars and stuff like that. So this is a different angle we're coming from today.
We have,
and we love it.
And some of the players that this bloke has managed is actually unbelievable.
Wow.
No one's doing that right now in the AFL.
Yeah.
But he was the trendsetter, and he started what we know as a successful player manager.
Yeah.
It is Ricky Nixon. Welcome, mate.
Hey, boys. Toot toot.
Yeah, toot toot, motherfucker. Ricky Nixon was one of the AFL's biggest player agents through the 1990s and 2000 with his management company, Flying Start. At its peak, he represented well over 100 footballers. That's some cash coming in for you, chicken. Including around a third of the league's captains. Few of the names I'm going to reel off for you.
Yeah.
When I did my research, I was like, holy... Amazing.
Yeah.
High-profile stars, Wayne Carey, Ben Cousins, Nick Riewoldt, Anthony Koutoufides, Jason Akermanis, that would have been a hard one, Nick Del Santo, and some other notable players, which are also superstars, Matthew Richardson, Paul Salmon, Darren Jarman, Corey McKernan, David Neath, Justin Lepage, Barry Hall, Fraser Garrick, James Hurd, Jonathan Brown, Brendan Fevola. Jeez, mate.
It just goes on. Just some of the biggest names in our game still today, to this point.
But when I went to Tasmania to sign up the biggest prospect ever, called Mitch Robinson, he basically didn't turn up for a coffee, and I flew all the way to Tasmania, sat there, had 3 coffees, and just went, well, see you later, pal.
No, you got him wrong there. You have to have an energy drink waiting for this.
Although when I met Mitch last year and signed him up for the boxing in Adelaide, first thing he said to me always sticks in my mind, and he said, I'm a mad bastard chicken. I said, well, you're talking to the biggest one, so just get out in the ring and start boxing.
I met my match. That's what I found out.
Do you feel like you met your match in chicken?
Mate, you know what? Like, you see the public perception of someone, and you see all the the headlines and articles or whatever it is. I've never seen something so different in my life.
Okay.
And so I resonated a lot with this bloke, and obviously he's done some shit, said some shit, but the best thing that I've seen when I do these one-off games for country towns is the amount of work he puts into the community and making sure everyone's happy, and he gives his time, and he obviously sets up some auctions and stuff and gives back to the the footy club, which is the best thing about it. But when he does his little speeches on stage and he does his Q&A, whatever it may be, he's so open and honest about it, and the best thing about that is he accepts the responsibility for a lot of things. So that's I rate that, and there's some stories that we spend probably too many hours in the car. I hate driving with people, and I like just doing my own thing. But it's a lot of good chats.
I'm looking forward to hearing some today.
Yeah, with all these big names, that's Hall of Fame type shit. Who was the hardest one to manage in terms of and signing them, getting them to sign up with Big Chicken, and who was the hardest to look after? Obviously there's some characters in there.
I get asked it a fair bit, but I mean, you don't want to, bag players that you manage.
No,
but I always say this, that everyone's different. So some players were very confident and great players, and others, I would say, borderline on arrogant. And some were crazy, and, some were very smart. And I know when someone asked me about Dustin Martin and Richmond and their success, I said Damien Hardwick was probably just after Alistair Clarkson, the first coach to actually realise it's about player management, and that Trent Cotchin is different to Dustin Martin. If you're in a team meeting, Dusty might concentrate for 3 minutes, Trent will concentrate for an hour. And you've got to understand that everyone's different, I suppose. So, I wouldn't say there was a player who was the hardest to manage, but it was easy to manage Wayne Carey because he just said, give us $2 million back in 2000 sort of thing. And that's very interesting that everyone's talking about the money, that Harley Reid's getting and Wanganeen Miller are. But Wayne Carey was getting $1 million back in 2000 and $500,000 off the field. And these days the players are getting 30 or 40 grand, I think, for, boot sponsorship, that sort of thing. He was getting 250 grand back in 2000. So that would be the equivalent of $1 million now.
Yeah. All right, so that was some of the hardest plays you've done, but it struggles for me as a manager. You would have had some times where how does that get out, or how do people find out about things when it's only me and him talking about it, me and the player? How are you doing it these days? How's it done?
Well, back in the day, a lot of the journalists were close friends of mine, and they'd ring up and go, Rick, we've got a story on Gary Ablett. I'm like, no, don't write it. I'll give you a story on Wayne Carey. He's going to sign a 4-year deal or something like that.
Yeah.
Like these days, the relationship between the managers or agents and journalists is non-existent from what I'm hearing. And that's a lot to do with because of the internet and the stories that are printed. I mean, Isaac Rankin, the invasion of his privacy in the last 4 or 5 days, filming on a plane overseas, and then the media post it. I think it's just disgraceful.
Yeah,
it goes to show in terms of like, because you just said the phones and like it would have been, the landscape's changed dramatically. But just to see that he's on a plane and not going overseas to try and get himself right for just like, okay, what's happened. I need time away to figure it out.
Just shut down from everything.
Boom, it's there. People are finding him in Bali or wherever you are.
You're a very recently retired player. How did you see the media?
I wasn't a big fan. I'm still not. I'm more so that the fact of what I don't agree with a lot of things is being first versus being right. And with this, so we broke the Jamara stuff, and we could have sold that for thousands and thousands of dollars, and we could have got headlines galore out of it. But we know we during the whole process and the way we did it, I felt like we did it right, and we did it right by the players. And I think like obviously it's so much of a mental game. If players are struggling and they see that as a clickbait thing or a headline or whatever it may be, they don't think about how the players or that person's going. So that's what I don't like, and I don't like ex-players throwing extra shit on people when they've probably done something and they've got skeletons galore. So that's what I don't like. But I don't know. You've dealt with them. I haven't really dealt with them.
When I was in player management, pretty much social media didn't really kick in big time until about 2010. Yes, Facebook was around early 2000s, I think, from memory.
2005 maybe.
Yeah, but Instagram, Twitter, they really fired up around 2010, just as I stuffed up.
Yeah,
and
timing.
It'd be interesting if I was managing, say, Gary Ablett, who's a very private person, and each to their own, or Wayne Carey now, etc. To even Tony Lockett, he hated publicity. I played with him. He didn't even know who he played on each week.
I haven't seen much. Like you see a couple of things here and there of him.
Yeah, I spoke to him recently, and he loves his life, living on the farm sort of stuff, and he's never been a person who's in the media. But he's an absolutely great guy and very loyal and unbelievable player.
So what's your take on the media then? How do you think of them?
Oh, look, I understand they've got a job to do. Yeah. What I dislike is a lot of the young journalists these days are told just put something out there that you find or whatever, and then the headlines are always community outrage or AFL legend, and he's played 2 reserve games.
That's
and
the thing.
It's so that the reaction is either love or hate. And I look at some stories recently of some high-profile ex-players, and on social media, 90% of the comments are just hate. And it's almost the love today is to hate, if that makes sense. And, they're posting these comments at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning when they're off their heads. And, it's not easy, that's for sure. And what people don't understand, and I used to say this about Ben Cousins all the time, is Ben was at the top of the triangle or the pyramid, and underneath was mum, dad, sister, brother, girlfriend, wife, kids, etc. So you think it's always about the player, but it affects a lot of other people. And when just at that borderline of about 2005, 2010, I used to get girlfriends ringing me all the time, or wives. Look, Ricky, tell the Herald Sun to get stuffed, or tell this Channel 7 to get stuffed. And I witnessed it firsthand, and I had to sort of manage them as well as the player. So
it's definitely what you said is true, because when I've had a couple of stuff ups, like. I wasn't embarrassed for myself. I was embarrassed for what I've done to the name or how my family felt about it. So that was my kick up the arse. Like, okay, it's not me going out to a nightclub and getting in a scuffle. Like, I'm getting smeared in the paper. I'm like, I can handle it. But it's like, mum, your dad, and what name you're creating. So that's a big thing.
It is, and it's almost like the player development coach at a club these days. His job is not just out on the ground; it's off the ground.
Yeah, and every club's employing welfare managers now, and
even a player, like Wayne Miller, every day, for probably best part of 6 months, and Harley Reid, they're reporting on their contracts, and it's just their thoughts half the time, journalists. It's not actually what's happening. If you actually look at it now, Harley Reid clearly, to me, wasn't really talking to other clubs or his manager. He basically made a decision, I'd say, 10 weeks ago, that he wanted to stay and be loyal to West Coast Eagles, who drafted him, and he'll make that decision in 2 years' time. And I think that deal, just like Wayne Miller, it's a great way to do it. I used to do a 4-year deal for Wayne Carey that always after 2 years it had an option, and he only had to achieve certain things, and he'd always achieve way above it. And then everyone wins out of it. The club wins, the supporters win, the player wins, the manager wins. He buys a new BMW. That's it.
So that is spot on, because you'd think I've always thought about I'd love to see everyone that's reported it, I want to see when they say sources or they have, people close to them, they say, I want to see how many articles have actually written. And then you guys see Harley Reid signed for 2 years, and you see, Wangley and Malira signed for X amount. Like, they're all wrong. So, like, all their sources are bullshit. So, like, you got it. No one's been held accountable. That's what annoys me.
Yeah.
But as you said, they've got to do a job, and, they're employed, so they've got to get it out there and be first, not right, just get something going. But
also,
it's
some agents, and I used to manipulate the whole system myself, where Brendan Fevola, who I manage, is a great friend of mine, Shafterby, went to another manager.
Who did he go to?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Yeah. And when he was at Carlton, and Lockie Henderson, who I managed, ended up at Brisbane, and I didn't want him at Brisbane. I wanted him at Carlton, Collingwood, or Richmond, or Geelong. And so basically, I made sure Fev got traded to Brisbane. I got Lockie down to Carlton, and then a few years later got him to Geelong, back where he came from.
I love Lockie's good
player. No, he was a very good player, and to this day, Fev goes, "I've got to kill you, chicken." But, I go, "Well, Fev, bad luck, mate." Yeah.
So Ricky, like we read through them, all these big names, and you were the standout player. Why was it you? Why did guys sign with you? Why did you have all these stars? What was your point of difference that you were able to capture these guys?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing was I'd play the game,
yeah.
So I really understood, what a player was going through, and also too, I played at 3 clubs, so I know what it's like to get traded. Or back in the day when I got recruited by Carlton, I was in Carlton Zone, which was around Bendigo. So a lot of things that I understood that probably certain agents today don't, because they haven't played the game. Like, they might have played at local level, but it's very different playing at AFL senior level, and also playing at 3 very different clubs. Carlton was amazing, probably the biggest club by far with business networking. St Kilda was bottom of the ladder for 20 years when I went there and ended up playing in the finals. And Hawthorn, when I went there, was the end of the most successful era in AFL football. So, the players that were at Hawthorn at the time was like 15 superstars in the team, and if I was in there was one dud.
So do you think it was attractive to players that you had other big names and got very good deals for it? Like, was that a point of view for them, or?
No doubt. Like, when I signed Wayne Carey, I'll be honest, his brother was managing him and said he's going to be the greatest player of all time. I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
And within like 3 games, it was like, wow, he can play. Yeah. And then like 25 players at North Melbourne signed with me. And then a year later, I signed Gary Ablett. 30 players at Geelong signed with me. Yeah. So if you have the star player at a club, a lot will follow. Certainly back in the day, because agents didn't exist, and also no one was earning money off the field. I don't see a lot of endorsements in that these days. And also players are restricted from, say, doing their own podcasts or doing TV and all that these days, whereas back in my day, you could do, like, the footy show started, that's right. And Eddie Maguire came to me and said, Rick, we want to get your players on there. Is $700 okay? And I go, hang on, there's no other show. What about $1,500? He goes, done. So every week I had 3 players on there, earning $1,500 back in 1995. And, Sam Newman became a very good friend of mine. And, that show to this day, most shows last 3 to 5 years maximum. Radio show or TV show, that went for 20 years. And, it was ahead of its time. And awesome. Sam still is a little bit outrageous out there. And but I love him. He said to me when I stuffed up 15 years ago, Rick, you're about to find out who your true friends are. They mightn't agree with what you've done wrong, but they'll stick by you. And there's a couple of players I managed who ring me recently. Oh, Rick, let's catch up. I'm like, where were you 10 years ago or 15 years ago? But someone like Gary Ablett Senior always rings me, check if I'm all right. But people don't see that, and I don't want them to see it. That's just the conversation between him and I. And I helped him through a lot of difficult times, and he's helped me through it. So
that's great.
It's not just about management; it's about mateship as well. So
that's the connection you need. I had my manager from day one, the same guy.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of players in the system who just feel like a number to their manager.
Yeah.
So how did you get that mateship, but having to make tough calls at the same time?
Because you would have had a bunch of players.
I pride myself on. Always sitting down with players. One of the things I was going to raise today is delisted players this time of the year.
Yeah.
There's 2 categories, I suppose. Young players who may be owning the system 1 year, or not 1 year probably, but 2 years to sort of 5. And then players who are basically forced into retirement early, I suppose. So a good example is Jason Dunstall. About 3 years out from when I thought he would be finished, I started to get him casual gigs on Triple M and Foxtel. and he did his Pig Jimmy Roo-Boy, which was a very famous show of Carey, Hurd and Dunstall, and trained him up, I suppose, for finishing after football. I don't see a lot of that these days. Players just finish and that's it. They're thrown to the wolves and they, have to start a new life. And it's not easy sometimes. And
It's not at all.
if you're drafted in after 3 years, you get delisted, you feel like you've failed. You don't want to go back to your hometown. You can be depressed. You can be miserable.
A bit embarrassed as well.
And so I used to try and work very hard on it, making sure they had a plan. And sometimes I would say, look, you mightn't agree with what I think you should do, but give it your best shot, sort of thing. So, and
That's
that
definitely the plan B. That doesn't. So I got delisted in 2014 by the Blues from my own doing. I fucked up a few times and learnt the hard way. But I didn't have a plan B. I had a 5-month-old son, and I was like actually shitting my pants. It's like I can be a sparky with the old man for sure, but I felt like I had more footy to give type of situation. But from then on, when I got that second chance, I was like, fuck, I know what I'll be doing after footy, regardless if it's going to be successful or not. You need that plan B.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And look at you after football. Very popular young man. That's why I signed you up for boxing last year. I just wish I'd got in the ring and punched the shit out of you.
Shush.
Now I'm going to ask you a question.
Go for it.
Jake
Love
King
this.
is a great personal friend
Push
of mine.
up.
He's a great example of
The
a
push up.
cat. He's a bit different and, great character. And he's just an amazing person, friend-wise. One day I had him at a sports night and I said, now, Jake, if you could punch 3 players in the head, who would they be? He goes, I'd punch Travis Cloke in the head first. I said, okay, who would you punch second? He goes, I'd punch Alan Didak second. I go, you don't like Collingwood, do you? All right, you got 1 punch left. Who are you going to punch in the head? He goes, I'd punch Travis Cloke again. So who are you going to punch in the head? 3 players, Mitch?
Oh, that's good.
He won't answer. He won't answer
No,
this.
he
'cause
will.
He'll be worried about the retaliation.
No, there won't be a retaliation,
retaliation
but
from
he
the
will
bloke.
because we've spoken about some players before.
Yeah, we've spoken about some players, but the ones that I don't like is they're probably going through some stuff at the moment. So remember I told you this, so I'm not going to say anything about
I understand that.
So I'm not going to throw him under a bus, but probably the players that I love to have a scrap with was Ben Hudson. Obviously, I've spoken about him. He did his homework like the special agent. He would know everything to attack.
Secret agent.
Oh, secret agent, yeah, secret agent.
He was very good lip.
He was the best lip I've ever heard in my life. He would go after players like verbally and hit you where you don't think you could be hit.
But one of the great guys, as we know,
the best I've ever met.
As we know,
I used to have a lot of runs with Stevie J. He was a shit talker.
Stevie J, he's a guy who I didn't manage. Met him at a nightclub. We had a good night.
Yep.
And not long after that, shit hit the fan. And I'll never forget, he turned up at my holiday house at Point Lonsdale, just out of the blue, rang the doorbell. Rick, I just came down to check if you're all right. And they're the sort of things you remember. You know? And
awesome.
Yeah, great guy, different cat, but amazing footballer as well.
That's so true. Like, there's some of the blokes that I haven't hated, like you strongly dislike, because I don't hate them. Off the footy field, I wouldn't know from Barrow. So on the footy field, you strongly dislike them. So there's Ballantyne, there's Stevie J, like those guys. The media will build this villain character.
Yep.
Off field, like most AFL players, say about 90% of AFL players are really good blokes. That's the barrier. Like on field, that's what happens on field stays on field.
But the trouble is, what you see is television playing, and sometimes you have an opinion of a player, you don't realise that he's been told to do something on the field.
Exactly.
That might be don't touch the footy, just play on this guy, and then you say, oh, he's useless, he didn't have a kick.
Yeah.
And a lot of players, especially the high profile ones, are a lot different to what people actually think they are.
Yeah.
And one topic I was going to bring up is. How did I handle Mad Monday? Because
I was going to ask you, because it's a famous time that right now there's a few players that I've seen getting around the traps.
End of season.
The delistings are happening.
Trips are coming up. I know footy clubs get quite scared about these boys going on group trips. I've been a part of them myself. There's always question marks. Hey, you shouldn't go.
There's no footy trips anymore. There's no Mad Mondays. Really,
it can be a manager's nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
how do you prepare for it?
The way I prepared for it, I used to join them. Chicken goes
Of course
bang.
you did.
And,
of course you did.
It's like having a chaperone.
It's like my wife would always say, just because back in say the 90s, you had a landline phone at home, and I used to have a private one next to the bed.
Yeah.
I used to get interesting phone calls.
Oh my God.
If people knew 100 of the stories that I know, and most of them were from jail or the prison cell, where they'd been locked up for pissing on the side of a nightclub or something like that. And but I think these days, I'd like to ask you the question: does the club say to you as a group, look, we're finished, but you got to be responsible. You got to be this and that or whatever else. Also, too, I've noticed at Mad Monday, players basically go overseas now with their mates. You know, it's like, why would you hang around in Melbourne at a nightclub? Because everyone's going to film you. If you go to the toilet, everyone's going to rumour monger that you're in there doing something. You know, it's got to a ridiculous stage. But did the club instruct you or what?
Yeah, definitely. We used to have like a undercover police officer come in sometimes just before the off-season starts. And they'll talk to you about what they look for and ways to handle certain situations. But the messaging was probably from about 2015 onwards is like, you might leave this club today and you're going on your off-season for 8 weeks or whatever it may be. You still represent the club. So that's what we would have that drummed into us, and that's a thing. And then obviously Mad Mondays was always the cause of a lot of these, fuck-ups from a lot of players and stuff. So we would have things in place. We'd have a chaperone, would have someone who we know and trust at the club in a certain role, not a coach, not a whatever. They would come and they would help you out if anything happens, or security at lock-ins if you have those at pubs or whatever it may be.
Enough.
But the ones on the away trips, that's when they have a chaperone and.
Yeah, you have someone along with the club that comes with you, chaperone.
Yeah,
but maybe
that's what they do these days. From what I hear, that there's 2 or 3 officials there.
Yeah,
And
which is
like
fine.
The hardest thing I've ever had to do managing players was taking a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning and trying to understand what they were saying. Yeah, because they were so pissed.
We had a couple of funny stories from our chaperones.
I think even just the message of taking footy trip off the headline is huge. Like, they're not on a footy trip. It's just mates are going overseas to do something. So that was our club. I remember at Brizzy at times it was like, it's not a footy trip. So that's also huge.
And there's a stigma around planning it too early too. So like if you're potentially playing finals and you're already planning, which you kind of have to get on the front foot, and there's always someone organising the week. So but there's a stigma around like it's a bad thing to be doing it now. So you got to do it kind of secretly, and then you'll have a leader who might be talking to the club saying, hey, we're probably going to go this area. We might do this during the week. So it's pre-planned now. It's not like spontaneous, like, fucking rock up here 10 a.m. the next day and you got to be there. It's and like, know what's happening.
Yeah, you're right. I'll just tell you quickly the last one about Mad Monday. I got a phone call at 3:30 in the morning from a player. I won't name who it is. And he goes, Chicken, you've got to help me out. You've got to save me. I said, what's going on? He goes, I got really pissed and I got with a girl and went back to her house. I said, yeah, so what? I was in bed with her and my missus rang. And I said, I'll be home in an hour. I said, yeah, well, so what? What happened? He goes, I dropped the phone on the floor. It was on speakerphone. And she heard what we did for the next hour.
No!
I said, I don't think I can help you, mate. See you later.
You're like, that's on you, mate. Just let me know if you need anything from me. That's crazy. So I can only imagine the things that you've seen or heard and player confidentiality, all that kind of stuff. That's obviously a big thing. But when trying to help players in certain situations, what level can you actually talk to the club about, hey, like this has happened? Do you have to get the front foot back then? I know it's different now. It's better to be honest and upfront.
Sometimes most of the time it'd be the player would ring me, but sometimes I had the club ring me, going, Rick, do you know about this? I go, no, I didn't know that. You know, a player went through a McDonald's drive-through and hit a pram. A lady walking a baby, one day, and then that never made the news back in the day. And but it was handled very well by the club. I had a great relationship with coaches. A lot of coaches would come to me. I don't think it would happen today, and say, Rick, with Mitch, right? Can you give him a slap around the throat? And what I'll do is I'll pat him on the back and let's see which way works and whether And that used to happen a lot. I probably got more the kiss and cuddle that side, and they'd rip into them sort of thing. So, that I don't think that happens as much today. But once again, because I'd played and also knew a lot of the coaches personally, that helped a fair bit.
Similar time in the scene, I guess. Yeah. With this time of year, the trade thing's obviously crazy. How much work would you actually have to do? Because I know you had a shitload of players, right? You can't personally manage that many contracts. So coming into trade period, how do managers go around, okay, the players have been speaking to me, they want to get out or they want to stay at the club for a bit longer, like what can they do? Let's get triggers and clauses. How time consuming actually is that? Because it's a long year.
Oh, look, it is time consuming. In fact, during the trade period or probably the finals, pretty much I was working 15-hour days, 7 days a week. But what I used to do a lot, and me didn't pick up on it, was I used to trade my own players. So for example, a Fevola, Lockie Henderson, I'd do a deal that worked for me.
Yeah.
Well, when I say work for me, get one player to a
best of both
club
worlds.
and another player to another club sort of thing. And there's quite a number of those deals. I reckon the two best deals I did in trade period was David Hale
Yeah.
from North Melbourne
Yeah.
Reserves. Alistair Clarkson said, "Chicken, what do you reckon? Can he play or not?" I said, "I reckon he can play. He's very athletic. Went to Hawthorn, played in 3 premierships.
Yeah.
Now is mooted as a potential new senior coach."
Absolutely.
And the other one was Brownie at Lee Brown at Collingwood.
Yep.
Came from
Ooh.
North Melbourne Reserves as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And Freo, and got him to Collingwood, and he was
Beautiful.
instrumental in their 2010
In the
premiership
Yeah,
win.
you got the flag too.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, Ripper guy. So there were deals and players that had very successful careers, but no one talks about a lot. Although David Hale's names come up today. One person I want to mention, I reckon, will be in the race for a senior coaching job, and I reckon he's unbelievably good. Is Stephen King.
Okay.
What he has is presence because he's big. He's already coached at Gold Coast Suns for a few games when who was it?
Like a fill-in.
Filled in for him up there.
Yeah.
After Stuart Dew, was it?
Yeah, Stuart Dew, sorry.
Yeah.
I reckon he'd be a big chance to get the Melbourne job.
Okay.
People are talking about Nathan Buckley and talking it up, but I'm not sure the answer is Nathan Buckley. I think that there's a number of very good assistant coaches coming through.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see Trent Cotson probably coach at senior level, but
Already.
yeah, well, I think he's probably 1 or 2 years away, and also he's got he's helping Brisbane, but
Well, in a
I don't think
leadership
he's full
space,
time.
just
Yeah,
for the time being.
yeah. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks to read the coaching side of it because especially if they lose someone like Stephen May, if Clayton Oliver says he's out or Petrarca or something.
Last year was a bit like a lot of smoke with this fire type
Yeah.
thing, with like 3 of their guns
Yeah.
potentially wanting out. But with what's harder? Did you manage a few coaches?
Yeah. I did manage a few.
Is
And,
it hard for them? I know, because coaches, you kind of get one crack unless
Yeah.
you're very successful early
Yeah.
in your career.
Yep.
You rarely last a test of time. So
Yeah.
what's it like for a coach who goes through? Okay, let's say Goody, for example.
Yeah.
He was at Melbourne.
Won a
He got into a
flag.
flag, and then I think personally
Well,
got treated like shit.
Rodney was at the Western Bulldogs and got him to a prelim and that, and
Went to
was-
Suns.
Yeah, went to the Suns and all that. So dealt with that one, but the best one was Choco Williams at Port Adelaide. Did his contract in July, a 2-year extension, and said that if he wins a premiership, then he gets a whole new contract. And what we meant was, next year and the year after. 8 weeks later, he won the premiership. So I went over to Adelaide and said,
So where's that new
he's got to
contract?
get a whole new contract. And what it said was it had to be double what he was on. And
Oh.
the CEO goes, "But Ricky, you meant next year and the year after." I said, "It says if he wins a premiership."
Yeah.
And so they doubled his contract.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I
There
spoke
you
to him last week about, obviously departing
He's got
Melbourne.
let go,
Yeah.
let go, didn't he?
Oh, look, he's people don't know.
He's very influential at a club in terms of developing players, right?
He assisted Dustin Martin a
Yeah.
fair bit to get to where he got to, and he's a very good development coach. Whether he wants to coach at senior level, I doubt his days are probably done. But I think he would be fantastic at Carlton. I really do.
Yeah.
Because
He's got that tough love,
yeah.
but he can lean on, be a shoulder to lean on too.
Yeah, because with Vossi or someone like that who I manage, he's a good friend. I think Vossi with Choco or Ken Hinkley in his ear would be a great combination, and it's what Carlton need. And I'd like to see that happen.
Yeah. In your time, I know you've managed all the best in pretty much in the game. Is there one player that it's a two-parter? Is there one player that you would have loved to have managed in the whole time of your career, and who is the best player of all time?
Well, Dane Swan will say I should have managed him, but I said,
Oh, you didn't
mate,
get him? You
you
do
were-
now anyway,
you
pretty
were
much.
pick 54, mate.
He
I
was a
don't
no-no.
look at players after pick 10. That's a good question. Like if you said, probably a better way to answer it is if I was managing players today, who would I like to manage?
Okay, we'll do it.
Number 1, Toby Green.
Yes.
I think he's the best player in the comp, and we saw it on the other night. To take those 2 marks that he took, St Kilda probably deserved to win the game, but Marcus Bonampelli, that was right on the borderline. He was drafted the year I got out of player management, and I went out to Marcelin College and watched him play and went, this kid is going to be really good.
His highlights were good, right?
Yeah.
Really good. Who else?
Is he the best Bulldog ever?
Well, Doug Hawkins, who I managed, who's probably right up there with Matthew Richardson as my all-time favourites and friends.
Right.
I think, Wayne Carey made a good point when he was on stage with me. I said, mate, I'm not going to ask you who the best player is of all time. Sorry, I'll ask you who is, but don't comment on yourself. And he said, well, Chicken, you can't compare eras because people talk about Lee Matthews and how good he was.
His
But
stats
when
were crazy.
Yeah, but when he started, there was black and white TV.
Yeah.
And then, I think it was sort of in the 80s, they televised a Saturday game or something like that. And then, of course, in the 90s, you see every game on Foxtel and now. So,
So on that, that's a bloody great point. With the errors situation, so because the game's evolved and changed a lot, so when I think of Lee Matthews, I never really watched him play. I've seen a few highlights here and there, but the word of mouth and the older generation like, oh, he's the best we've ever seen, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is it harder for blokes nowadays to try and be, the best ever? And obviously we had Dusty, who was like just a freak.
Yeah, well, quick story on Dusty. Ray Burney played at Collingwood, Carlton and Geelong. He was a good friend of mine and managed 3, I think, of the under-18 teams, TAC Cup. And he used to tip me into players. Anyway, he rang me one day and he said, Rick, I've got the next Wayne Carey. I said, mate, I hear this all the time, which I did. He goes, no, seriously, you've got to come up to Bendigo tomorrow. This Dustin Martin can play. I said, mate, I haven't got time. He goes, come up, Rick. I said, rightio, I'll go up to Bendigo, go and see the old man. And got up there. They bounced the ball. The ball got tapped down to him. He dodged around 3 players, pushing them in the throat. Had 2 bounces, went to centre forward and kicked a 60-metre goal. I ran out in the ground with a little notepad and I said, sign here, son. And, he's been an amazing player, hasn't he? And people say, where do you rate him though, Rick? Because, he's easily the best, most successful player in the games that count.
Yeah.
And
it's
a hard one because you can't compare him probably to Greg Williams. What Dusty is what Carlton don't have, a magical player.
Yeah.
And I've said this, Patrick Cripps great, Curnow great, Mackay, doesn't matter, Walsh, whatever. They don't have a magical player and they've got to find one.
Well, so say you could trade anyone in the comp to go to Carlton to help him, who would that be then? Who's that magical player?
Well, get Toby Green there, but that's not going to happen.
He's on the back end of his career though.
I think that, I think there's a lot of talent in the Indigenous area playing up forward, the Cyril Riolis, those sort of Eddie Betts, Bobby Hill, etc. That's who won Collingwood a premiership, 2 years ago. Bobby Hill, kicks 4 goals because everyone's worried about, McStay or something like that.
Yeah.
It's I always loved Stephen Milne back in the day. I thought he was the best forward pocket player of all time. Are you a Saints fan?
Saints fan.
Mildy's one of my all-time favourites.
He's a ripper. No one's talking about.
But you don't see a lot.
Perception.
Cyril Rioli was probably more a half-forward flanker, but he probably contributed to 2 of their 3 flags massively.
Yeah.
Mitch Robinson was pretty good at Brisbane. He was pretty magical.
Bit nutty.
Bit nutty.
I wish I had the license to do what I could do. Nah, joke.
Good to have in your team, those blokes, though.
With do you reckon accolades kind of? So we'll talk about Dusty just for a quick sec before we wrap up everything. So he's got 3 Norm Smiths, right? He's going to be forever known for his grand final appearances.
Yep.
There's so many players who could have been that guy because their team wasn't good enough.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's about that player in the premiership team is usually not picked up by because someone's double teaming another player.
Exactly.
And they need to be a smart player and get into space. And also the mids have to not be focused on the key forward. Look out to the pocket a bit and put the ball out in front of him, sort of thing. So I think Adelaide have got a few. Geelong have definitely got a few now. Brisbane have. Freo have. So I was blown away by that game last week. I
didn't expect that.
Yeah, look, someone told me on Facebook, Chicken, you realise that in March you tipped Freo as the biggest outsider to win the flag. I went, did I? I didn't know that.
Oh, shit.
We ride them hard.
So I thought the biggest
the
biggest outsider to win the flag, going back 6 weeks ago, was the Western Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Now one game's changed it where the biggest outsider is probably Freo. But I think it's Geelong's to lose.
I agree with that.
And I think the rest are all probably 4 or 5 of them could be in second place. I'm not convinced with Adelaide. I think when Hawthorn played over there 3 weeks ago, they were 5 goals up on them and lost by 14 points. And then they only beat West Coast by, a goal or something.
I agree with that. I feel like the next 2 years is Adelaide's years.
But no doubt the
they can win it. But I'm saying in terms of who I think is ready and primed, is Geelong and then Brisbane Lions.
Well, the big thing I focus on this time of the year is big bodies win finals and experience. Geelong tick.
Yeah.
Have they got a key forward? They got 2. Have they got a magical player? They got 3 of them. Have they got some experience in the midfield and talent? Yes. They've got Dangerfield. And also, when Danger didn't play a full season 3 years ago, the last 15 games, he was the best player in the comp and won the Norm Smith medal.
It was good for him.
This year, once again, he's only played, I think, about 14 games or something, 12. you've got to manage it like that. And it worries me, Collingwood, for example. Nick Dacos, I think Josh has played every game as well.
Yeah.
Darcy Moore's played every game, looks tired to me.
They've also been told they've done it the wrong way, which I look at hindsight, I was thinking, they're managing a few players here and there, they're trying some different positions. Yep. It's kind of fucking with them a bit now, though. But in terms of come finals time, I think they'll be fresh, and all it takes is a big redirection. Like, hey guys, like you know your role, just play your role. Yeah. So you lose that a little bit, but that'd be fresher.
Collingwood won it now. It's like I've got a million friends who are Collingwood supporters. Yeah. It's amazing how they've all changed them. It's our flag in July or probably June, so we can't win it now. Chicken. It would be amazing if they won it. So
I don't think they're a chance. No.
Look,
but you can't rule them out though, because.
I think if they win their first final, which will probably be in Adelaide, they'll get to a prelim. Well, actually, they'll be in a prelim, won't they? Yeah. So,
all right. So
it's probably their
gun to
biggest.
your head. Who's winning this year?
I'm going to stick with Geelong with Freo, the biggest outsider.
All right. Brownlow medalist.
Well, Nick Dacos.
Yeah.
I think they engraved it back in March. He deserves it. Great player. Another great story, I was coaching Q Comets under 13s with Peter Moore. Darcy Moore was my captain.
Oh, I've heard this story.
And we were watching the game before us, and there's this kid like absolutely blitzing. And I said to Pete, geez, he's got to be the son of a player for sure. And then I hear this, hey, Chicken. And I looked around, here's Peter Dacos walking towards. I said, that's not your son. He goes, yeah, that's my son, Chicken.
That's crazy.
And and I was always fascinated by, he dominated so much at junior footy. Sometimes they don't go on, those players. Yeah. And in his first year, he was a star of the competition.
It's ridiculous what he's doing. And still to today, and he can get bashed up and tagged. Like he might flop every now and then, do his thing. Yeah. That's gonna be always probably in his game because he gets free kicks from it.
Yeah.
But what he's doing, and he could well have 2 Brownlows already, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. But if someone said to me, how do you compare him to say Wayne Carey or Tony Lockett or Gary Ablett? Well, midfielders, I guess. If you said who are the best midfielders, there's probably 30 of them, if you know what I mean. But when it comes to key forwards, there's probably 6 of them. And
where's Jezza rank in your all-time forwards then?
To me, he's like a Silverioli, if that makes sense.
He's like a half
I'd call him magical. I think he played in 3 flags at Carlton. But those players that are half forward pocket, they're a brand of their own. But you can't win a flag without them.
What Jeremy Cameron's doing right now is ridiculous.
Yeah,
he's absolute.
Well, Jack Martin at Geelong's, that magical
kick 4 on that, kick 4 fast goals ever.
And also he's got the confidence he could do that in a final now. So
So back to you, Ricky. Like, what is the hardest thing about being a player manager? Like, what was the biggest struggles? What was hard for you?
Good question. Probably giving bad news to a player, whether that be delisted or the club won't do a contract or they want to trade you. Or also dealing with personal issues, addiction. Mm-hmm. A lot of people ask me, what's the biggest thing you deal with addiction-wise? Chicken, it'd be drugs, wouldn't it? I say, no, it's gambling. Yeah. I'm not going to go into the exact players or problems, but I had dealt with some terrible gambling and still dealing with it to this day with ex-players.
Do you have to take the emotion out of it, though, yourself? Or did you ride it with them?
Yeah, well, one player who was partaking in some powder up his nose, and the club said, Rick, can you talk to him? I said, right, I don't know why I did it to this day. He was coming to the office, and when he sat down, I thought, if I say to him, you've got to stop and stop now, he'll go into denial. And for some reason, I said, now, before we start, mate, I'm just going to make a coffee. It's going to take 90 seconds. I'll come back. If you lie to me, this is the repercussions. And when I came back, I said, mate, it's simple. Are you doing it? He goes, yeah, I am, Chicken. I said, well, good. He goes, you're not going to tell me to stop? I said, no, keep going. Just slow down for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, then we'll make a decision. And to this day, he hasn't touched drugs ever again. And
it's such a different approach, isn't it? But
it's
because he's probably known best.
So it's not stupid news, but high-profile achievers around the world, sports people, even businessmen, are addictive personality because of the adrenaline. And I've only learnt this myself in the last 10 years, to slow down. I was at a funeral yesterday, and everyone was drinking from 3 o'clock till probably midnight, and I probably only had 5 or 6 drinks. I thought, wow, if that was 10 years ago, I would have had 6,000.
Isn't it crazy how, because when we do these sports functions after the local games I play, we're both first home before everyone, and it's hard to say to them because they all think, oh, Robbo and Chicken, they're going to have a big night. I was like, no, I'm bugging.
Yeah.
I'm going home.
I mean, I don't know why, but I sort of pride myself on. I might have 1 or 2 beers, but I don't want to be on stage and people say, "Oh, he was drunk, he was high as a kite, he was doing this, he's going to the toilet." Rah, rah, rah. It's like you got to deliver first, then maybe you could have a good time. But even then, it's like I usually head home pretty early. I've always. Yeah. I go to bed. People won't believe me. I don't watch any TV. I go to bed at 6:30, 7 o'clock. The trouble is, I wake up at 2 and get my notepad out and start writing down stuff.
But don't let the bastards defeat you.
Don't let the bastards beat you, mate. Yeah. It's amazing how like. It wasn't my saying. This is from my great grandfather. He got held up by 6 bush rangers with guns and bashed the shit out of him. And this is in 1834. He famously said, "Don't let the bastards beat you." And my grandmother, when I was struggling 15 years ago, said, "The bastards in your head are beating you, Rick." So, I'll break some news here. I've actually tried to achieve lately the big thing in my life, which I can't do, and that's music. So I'm not going to play guitar or a drum, but I've written a song, "Don't Let the Bastards Beat You." And I'm meeting with a very prominent AFL identity music man next couple of weeks. And
Snoop Dogg.
No. Yeah. And because I need someone to sort of put the music to it, I suppose. I've written the words.
Get the words, you need something to...
Yeah. So the chorus goes, "Don't let the bastards beat you. Don't let the bastards win. Don't let the bastards beat you. They're always trying to get in your head."
Yeah. That could be bloody after the celebration song.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not.
So
the backstory to all that's actually really positive.
Well, I'm not. It's not about money. It's just what I want to achieve is just one person helping them. Yeah, and then I've achieved
what is the bastards beating you right now? Then what are you referring to when your mum tells you?
Yeah,
what's happened to that?
When
point?
I say it, and Mitch has seen me speak, I'd say it's the bastards in your head that beat you. So if you're sitting in the room at the moment, and you're gambling, or you're drinking, or you're doing drugs, or you're cheating on your missus or your husband, if you're just not turning up at work, bullshitting to the boss, it's the bastards in your head. Yeah. And you've got to actually do one thing. You've got to not sleep in bed, being depressed. You've got to bounce out of bed every morning. Once you do it for a week and you exercise, go for a walk, whatever, you watch the change in your mentality. Okay. Like even myself in April, the media would drive me mad, and a mate said, "Why don't you come down to Dramana?" For those who don't know, it's an hour out of Melbourne, down near Sereno Portsea, and I'm staying now till Christmas. And the change in my brain is unbelievable, and diet's a big thing as well. Eating porridge and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, because we have seen you in the media for some things at the moment, and it's this sort of the mentality you're taking towards all that stuff right now is.
Yeah, well, it's definitely. I've had a bad, when I say bad 24 hours, a good friend of mine died and I had to go to his memorial service yesterday. I woke up this morning to a message. One of my other good friends passed away yesterday. So 2 good friends in 24 hours. And also a court case that I was going to on Monday, a 3-day trial, for the 8th time got adjourned. And it's like, why should I have to deal with this? And media, in fairness, the media didn't write anything about it, but it's like this has been going for nearly 4.5 years.
Yeah, and it's just still there.
Well, once again, it's not about me that I worry about. It's family. It's and look, I've had a couple of family members. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? I've had other family members go, "We support you, Rick." Because I understand they see a headline, and they might be living in Queensland. It doesn't matter. Yeah, they don't know the background of it all. So, they. And a lot of haters, they don't come and feed the homeless on Wednesday nights and help me, do they? Yeah. Coles have been great to me, Bunnings, and lots of cafes and restaurants, a bakehouse in Bay Street, Hunky Dory, my mate. Great story.
Love Hunky Dory's. You got a contact there?
Yeah, well, Greg Ramos, when I moved to Port Melbourne, Hunky Dory was across the road. Yeah. And he introduced himself and said, he was like this, "Rick, whatever you need, mate. If you need money, here's 20 grand. Yeah. He's just like, this, and you need fish and chips, mate. Whatever, I'm supporting you."
Shout out to Hunky Dory's.
Anyway, he famously, when he bought the shop from a Greek guy, I think he was just going okay, but they decided they'd do something different, so they put salads with fish and chips. Yum. And the name Hunky Dory is a great name, and I think he's got like 20 plus shops there around Australia.
Is he franchised the shit out of it?
And he donates every Wednesday to the homeless, and the fish and chips go in 1 second, and the people who are struggling love it. And he came and helped me a couple of weeks ago feed them as well, and just like Reed's cranes and haulage.
Shout out to Reed, mate of the best in the
He
business.
donated.
Need a crane, mate? Fucking Reed.
Well, Matt Reed, he donated. He came to see me. I only met him 3 months ago because of a one-off game like you played this year. Milne played one at Minthurst, and he donated 100 hoodies and 100 beanies. And I went, wow. And I didn't ask him to do that or anything. And also, it's the middle of winter, or was,
freezing down.
Right, yeah, and he just he's an amazing guy.
So do you feel like the general public has a bad perception about you as it sits right now, or like what's your thoughts around that?
It's changed. Like I don't like talking about
manager.
Yeah, that's but
that's
let's just
fine.
say one elbow in the head to Seb Costello changed everything.
Yeah.
This lady in Port Melbourne, she's 95. She's now my best friend.
Yeah.
She helps me feed the homeless. She came up 6 months ago to the famous Bakehouse Cafe, and there's 100 people out the front eating breakfast. And she goes, "G'day, Robin." I said, "It's Ricky." She goes, "No, you're Robin." I said, "I'm Ricky." She goes, "No, you're Robin Hood of Australia." And the whole cafe exploded. And I thought, what it is down at Dramana, I just have a lot of women come up and friendly say, "Rick, we support you. You know, this is just clickbait crap." They didn't know what clickbait was, 5 or 6 years ago, and now most people in the world understand these stories are all about hate or love.
It's fabricated to make a sale.
So look at Wayne Carey, what he's copped the last couple of months. And it's total bullshit. And he shouldn't have to go through it, and his kids shouldn't have to go through it, and his partner shouldn't have to go through it. So where's it all going? People are more educated on all of this, and I get a lot of support in the community, but at the same time, you get haters. But Sam Newman taught me, don't even respond to them. I mean, we all have them. You wouldn't be alive if you didn't have a hater.
I think that's really a good way to think about it. Like, for me, you dwell on the hate you get, and you get a lot of a lot of praise, or I get a lot of DMs that I'll see really nice ones, and they'll say "Oh, you're one of my favorite players. I'd love to see what you're doing." I mentally, you just see it and move on. If you see a hate one and it hits, you're like, what the fuck? And then you get so angry. It's you got to be able to separate it. It is what it is.
I reckon 99% of haters, and I'm mainly only on Facebook, is you go to their profile, they've got no profile picture, they've got two friends, so it's probably your ex-girlfriend or or someone, doesn't matter. Yeah. And I've got a few of them. So I used to respond, I'm going to bash you, I'm going to kill you. And then now I'm really happy with the way I just go blocked. Yeah. Because you're only feeding them if you respond anyway.
I learned that early days.
And also people respond to them. I don't have to respond. Other people respond and go, piss off.
Yeah, correct.
But unfortunately it's the way of the world, and I wouldn't like to be Donald Trump or something like that.
But he's got too much money to be worrying about that shit.
So I know Ricky Nixon as a player manager. Where are you at right now? What's your point?
What do you do? And I was like,
what's your point of view? Where you're at, and where do you see yourself sort of going?
I've got to be careful what I say, but I'm working on a massive concussion project. My ambition is simply this: is Greg Williams is one of my best mate growing up. John Platten I played with, John Barnes I managed, Gary Abbott Senior I managed. They're all going through this terrible time, and I don't want a kid in Kerrang to get knocked out today and not know where to go. I want him to go somewhere where he's tested by consistent equipment all around Australia, by people who are trained up, and all the reports are consistent, and we have a plan in place that's the same for everyone. And I've had an unreal response from medical centres, hospitals, universities, I just don't want to see what's been happening. And if someone said, "What's the answer to this concussion?" Have you been concussed? You would have been right. You've been bashed a few times.
What I've found is I've had a brain scan recently. And you knew about that, and I had seven spots. But I feel like what you just mentioned then. I find that you should be doing the brain scan early days. So do it as do it consistently. So then you can see, okay, was it from football or was it from childhood? Because you don't know until you know.
Sometimes you can just fall off.
When you pass away,
you
can do the CT, the brain scan, or cut it open, have a look. But if you can maintain and see where something might have happened, because I remember having blackouts as a kid, just doing a backflip off something and fuck my head's up. But that could have been a white spot or a white, so we don't know. It's just
exactly. And you made a good choice. I tried to talk you into boxing again, but totally agree. It's not worth the risk for your kids. And
kids.
Danny Ford was probably up there with my top 3 or 4 best mates, and I saw him deteriorate from the time he was 50. I'm not being a smart ass, but I didn't realise it was concussion. His behaviour changed, and Anita, his wife, who's gorgeous and lovely, her and I have had a discussion since all this happened, and we agree we don't want to see something like that happen again. And,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
you know, it's what's the answer? I don't have an answer to
think
the
there
rules in the AFL. I just have an answer to making sure if you're concussed, you get onto it early.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You-
I
you
100%
don't-
agree.
Because if you wait till you're 40 or 50, you can't do anything about it. Really.
Well,
So,
the whole point of like you're not waiting, but you don't know until like you start feeling the side effects. And you see, like, I saw some reports from the current players who are going through it. The early retirements from you know, Seedsman and was it Murphy
Marcus
from?
Adams, these
Yeah,
type of
I've seen
guys.
that firsthand. Like my reaction to a concussion, I can play better footy.
yeah.
These blokes had one, and they're struggling.
They forget how
Plus,
to get home.
the problem, by understanding, with you know, any legal case is going to be simply this: the judge is just going to say, "Okay, Mr. AFL, what duty of care did you show Mitch Robinson?" And they'll say, "Well, we told him when he started that it was a dangerous game, and we now suspend anyone, even if it's an accident."
Yeah.
That's their backup position.
That's what's
And
happening.
then the judge is going to say to the player, "Okay, Mr. Robinson, tell me what you know." And the player's going to say, "Well, I don't, because I can't remember anything.
Yeah.
I just know I got knocked out 14 times." And then the judge goes, "Is there anyone else here who can help me?" Well, guess who wrote down notes about the players he managed and how they behaved after concussion? Me.
Yeah.
So is that proof, though, that their current health
Could be
is
fabricated, could
yeah.
make
It's
it
not
up. You know,
proof,
like
but
It's not proof.
it's
no.
the answer to all this is simple. Is the AFL, I know, want to certainly support players, but of course they want to make sure those players are actually really unhealthy, or you know, it is because of concussion.
Have you seen what they've done? So I've read.
Yeah.
So this is me just reading a little bit, and then it could be fake, could be not. So they've hired people. So the insurance company.
Yeah, Marsh Insurance.
Yeah, or someone overseas, like it's a big one.
Yep.
They've done a full background check. They've got into their
Yeah.
accounts on their social medias and gone through everything to see if they're if they're talking shit or being truthful.
Well,
I think that's like you can't take a player at his word for it, and obviously we know because we're players and we know that our teammates have been fucked up from it. But to see like what they have to go through and going through their personal stuff just to prove a point for an insurance payout, like that they honestly don't care about too much of the money. It's like just being looked after. So if anything does happen, fuck, at least they're looked after.
Yeah.
So that's what I find a bit of bullshit.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a number of players involved. There's club, there's family, there's the player,
Yeah.
there's insurance companies, there's the AFL, there's medical people, there's equipment. Who trusts, you know, that helmet you're getting tested by?
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
on the news last week was this mouth guard. Now, the research I've done into it is it's not.
I
It's
wore a mouth
accurate.
guard with a chip in it.
Yeah, it's
And I
not.
don't have
accurate at
results
all,
from
you know, and but what the answer here is every year there's going to be something that's more accurate. And it's not an easy situation because the problem is if you do your hamstring, you're right to go in 3 weeks. If you, you know, do your knee, you're right to go in 12 months. If you get concussed when you're 22,
When you're right.
you don't know till you're 50
Yeah.
that you've got a problem and you can't reverse it. So
Yeah. Well, it's changed so much even since I started playing.
Yeah.
Like I wore it as a badge of honour. Like that's
Yeah.
how I came to the game. Like if you get knocked out, just get back up and say,
I'd
fuck you,
probably
keep going.
agree. Yeah.
Go again.
So like when it happened, that even the doctors would see it, and like we did the test, but it was like there wasn't any ruling around it. So I was like, "How are you feeling?" I feel great.
I'm good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Now it is that you don't get a say. I think it's good taking out the players' hands because we'll always say you were good to go.
Yeah,
That's because
no,
you're
I agree with
competitors. But
Yeah.
I feel like it's in a good space, and unfortunately, there's still more concussions, and they're happening in without being dirty. It's in football acts.
Oh,
So
and
that's what's
the-
making everyone angry.
The other thing that's changed is if I got concussed when I played, it was because you got punched in the head.
Exactly.
Or you went for
Yeah.
a mark
These
and you
ones are
landed on your head. Now,
belt
the
you.
game's an athletic event and the players are running at 100 miles an hour and, you know, they can't decide within 1,000th of a second to
Can't.
change direction.
No.
If the player ducks down and your hip hits them instead of your shoulder, how do you control that? But,
can't.
The Stephen May one kind of
Yep.
made me believe like it's going in
Yeah.
a whole different direction.
Yeah.
Well, I'd hate to see a player miss a grand final because of, you know, an accident, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Or a footy
but-
act. Like I'm
yeah.
saying, like two
Yeah.
players going for the ball,
Yep.
or one tackles some guy and he hits his head on the ground.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
It's a football act,
you're
but-
spot on.
All right, well, my
So,
missus is waiting outside. You got one more?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you're a household name of the AFL, and we know that. But what's the relationship like there now with you and the AFL? Is still a lot of love for you, or is it just something
Oh,
you take some interest in? Or
You know, look, the AFL, not bagging them, but, you know,
Yeah.
Andrew Dillon's a good friend of mine. And, you know, Andrew Demetrio was, and Gil McLaughlin was a great friend, and a lot of the commissioners are good friends of mine back in the day, Mike Fitzpatrick, Ron Emmons, etc. Is they don't want controversy and they don't want, you know, people like that. I understand that. So I've moved on.
you've moved
And
on? Yep.
it's not going to stop me helping a young kid in Korang who gets concussed.
Yeah.
What someone at the AFL thinks of me. But I've spoken to some people at the AFL last week who were terrific, but the future has to be not about people, individuals or egos or who likes someone or who doesn't. It's got to be about the health of players.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm focusing on. And also, too, I'll be careful what I say here, but I'm bringing out a new book for Christmas.
Hey.
And I'll only say as much as this. Actually, I'll announce it here.
Is it autobiography?
Make sure
I'm going to announce it here.
Make sure you send it up to Brisbane.
Well, you're in it because it's the funniest footy stories ever by stars of the game.
Yeah.
And apparently I know a few of them. And I've spoken to a lot of them. They're going, yeah, chicken. And some of them told me some bloody funny stories. And also I'm going to run a competition. Local footballers around Australia send in their funniest footy story.
Yep.
20 of them win a spot in the book. And one of them gets a corporate box at the MCG next year with 10 of their mates.
Love
and I'll
that.
host
Yeah,
it.
beauty.
Yeah.
Let's we'll put that up for you.
That's this year?
Yeah, I'm basically starting literally on Monday.
Perfect.
Interviewing players. And look, the thing I've learned in the last week, I've been educating myself on this chat. What's it called? GPI or whatever it is.
ChatGPT.
AI, all this AI stuff. Like now, I just have to record you telling it, and it
does
goes,
it for you.
it prints it out,
Yeah.
and then
You
I've
can
got
change anything. So
I've got
can
a
you put that
PA
into
who's she's got assisting me. She'll edit it all, and it'll be written in 4 weeks,
Beauty.
and then get it printed off, and away we go.
Looking
Well
forward
done.
to that. I can't wait to have
Keep
it
your
on my
eyes
desk.
out for that.
Well, that
Everybody.
is Ricky Nixon. He's had a lot of controversies in his life, but if anything, just make sure you don't judge a book by its cover unless it's his one that he's bringing out end of the year.
That's it.
Mate, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it. We've got to get him back on, surely.
Oh, we have
We
to.
need what is his name? Secret agent? We need him
Sorry,
back.
you have to speak to my manager.
Ah,
Chicken
shit.
goes bang.
Imagine that.
Yeah, we might just tee something up there. We could have something.
I like
so,
it. I like it. But thank you for coming in.
looks
We know,
good.
No, thanks,
you know
boys.
you've gone
Love
through
it.
some stuff last
You've got
couple
a
of
great
days. So
podcast,
it's
you
really
guys.
good.
So well done.
Thanks, Ricky. Appreciate it.
Toot, toot, motherfuckers.